welcome to the Skiffy Fanny Show's At the Movies.
The only movie in cinematic history that revolves around a mistranslation of Latin as a plot element.
That's true. Yeah. I'm Shaun.
I am Paul.
And we're joined today by Shirley Jackson Award finalist Eden Royce, author of middle grade novels Root Magic, Conjure Island, and The Creeping of Dogwood, which I believe we have interviewed you about for all three, if I'm correct.
You have. You are correct, yes.
So we're the best podcast on the internet. You're welcome. Also the author of Hollow Tongue and the Spook Lights collections of Southern Gothic horror stories. And she's here today to force us to talk once again about Event Horizon, totally and utterly against our will, and in no way did we agree to this without having our arms twisted. That it didn't happen. Welcome to the show, Eden.
Thank you so much for forcing me to come here. No, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about one of my favorite movies. And when I found out that it was on Torture Cinema before, I thought, we've got to actually talk about it in some glowing terms in some ways. So here I am.
Yeah. To be fair, you did say I'd love to talk about it, and then I think our reaction was, "Oh, okay, let's do it." And it was nothing else.
I think so.
Oh my gosh! Oh, Intensely Eric has joined the chat. Haven't seen you around in a while, Intensely Eric. Welcome. I hope you enjoy us talking about Event Horizon, which is a great film, and Eden loves it.
I do.
Great. Okay, so today's show, we're discussing 1997 science fiction horror film Event Horizon, directed by Paul Anderson and written by Philip Eisner. It stars the amazing and great Lawrence Fishburne, New Zealand's national treasure Sam Neill, Kathleen Quinlan, 101 Dalmatians live-action remake person who was... sorry, this is the only movie I know of her in other than Event Horizon, which is Jolie Richardson. And so I remember her from that movie. Due to Paramount Pictures' interference in their prioritization of Titanic, the film had a troubled production of rushed filming and editing. The original 130-minute cut of the film was heavily edited by the studio's demand over Anderson's objections. We will get into why. It was a commercial and critical failure, but not in our hearts.
No, we have previously talked about this film on Torture Cinema. I was there for it. I didn't think it was a torture. I gave it a B. David Annandale, our resident film critic, gave it a B. Jen gave it a B-, and our guest Rachel Cordasco gave it a C. Boo. Event Horizon has slowly gained recognition and respect with increased home video and DVD sales to the point of it being considered a cult hit. Paramount even went begging back to Anderson to restore the movie to his original vision, but unfortunately a lot of the footage is thought lost or destroyed.
So Eden, we're going to give you the first task tonight, which is to tell us why we were wrong to put it in the Torture Cinema show. So what's the deal?
But before we get into that discussion...
Oh, sorry. The script has more stuff, and it's just never ending.
Yeah.
Look, here's what we're going to do.
We're gonna call an audible and just have it...
We're just going to call an audible. Forget the next part of the script. Eden, it is your moment. Go for it.
Well, honestly, one of the things that I love about this, I can't obviously just say I love this movie and Evian and Torture Cinema is just wrong, full stop. There's a delight that I have when I see Event Horizon either come on television. It was currently on, I think it's currently streaming on BBC Film right now, alongside things like, Schindler's List and Chinatown and movies of that ilk. And then I'm scrolling through it, and then I see Event Horizon, and I'm like, ABC is featuring Event Horizon right now? Okay, great. It's one of those films that I'm not surprised when you read out that the studio prioritized another film, because as a lot of us know, either the publisher, if it comes to books, or the production company, when it comes to film, they need to back the film. They need to show that they have support for the film. And a lot of times, brilliant films don't get the knowledge, don't get the respect that they deserve, don't get seen the way that they did. One of the things that I love about it, I saw it in the theater when it first came out. I'm dating myself. But there's something powerful about sitting in a theater when you see that film for the first time. It's the energy that's around the film, hearing other people sort of gasp or shriek, and having that mass experience with a bunch of other people that you don't know, seeing certain things in the film, where it's a shared moment in time. And I think that's one of the reasons that I love it. It's another reason is just I love sci-fi horror. I can't get enough of it. And you can point to some other things, some things in this movie and some shots in this movie that are reminiscent of other horror classics.
It's true. So can I just say, Eden, the reason it ended up on Torture Cinema is not because any movie we cover for torture is necessarily torture. We have a system, which is we only consider films that have a below a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, ideally both. And so that's what we look at as our measure. Because realistically, I mean, other than really obvious like riff tracks films that, you know, are like notoriously bad, we really don't know for sure because I've not seen every film that has a rating like that. So Event Horizon has a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, and oh god, what is it on IMDb? I just had it a second ago. It is a 6.6. So we did it because it was a sci-fi thing, and Rotten Tomatoes has it at least at the time it was really low. The scores might have been different. I am very grateful to hear that there's a 6.6 on IMDb, which means audiences are a little bit more happy with it. And certainly on Rotten Tomatoes, 62% of their regular folks like that film, which I think is good. But that's kind of the measure. But it does mean that occasionally you get a film that should be bad because everybody says it is, and then you watch it and go, but it's not. So like Voyage of the Rock Aliens, which is this ridiculous sci-fi musical from the 80s with Jermaine Jackson, of all people, which should not be good. And then we watched it, and Jen and I were utterly delighted by it. And so I think that's part of the fun journey of torture cinema is sometimes you watch something and you're like, wow, that was actually nowhere near as bad as I thought. Or sometimes you watch something that's terrible and you're like, but we had so much fun. Because weirdly, the way it was made was ridiculously fun. So Event Horizon is in that first category. You watch a film that people say is bad, and then it turns out it's just not that bad. It just isn't. It's not a bad film. It's got its flaws, but it's not bad.
Is this where I give the summary?
Yeah, Paul, why don't you tell us, what is Event Horizon about? But wrong answers only.
Oh, I'm not gonna confuse our listeners. That would be terrible. Okay, so in the year 2040, a secret government project to create a faster than light ship called the Event Horizon disappears without a trace. 7 years later, it reappears in a decaying orbit around Neptune, and so Lawrence Fishburne and his crew are tasked to take Sam Neill, who designed the ship, to the Event Horizon and find out what happened. Turns out the Event Horizon has been to a very, very bad place and wants a new crew to take them back with it. That's where Lawrence Fishburne and company come in. Lots of horror subsequently occurs. That's kind of the movie.
Excellent summation.
So I guess like we just have to deal with like I've already said I like this movie. Obviously, Eden, you like this movie. Paul, you like this movie. But like, let's get to some specifics. What about this movie is so interesting? Why do I mean, other than it's fun to see come up on the TV, like, what's a specific thing? that folks like, and I suppose I'll
I
throw that to
have
you.
a big interesting.
Oh, go.
I have
go,
a big
Paul.
interesting thing. So I'll let the two of you go before I come with
Okay.
my thing, which you're not going to see coming.
Okay, well then, Eden, I guess I'll start with you, like, because you really like this film. Give me something. What do you love?
I do. I watch a lot of horror, and not always, but sometimes horror is, the cast is sometimes full of unknowns. Sometimes the acting is less than wonderful. And I really love watching horror where the casting director has incredibly strong actors. And that doesn't always happen. I think probably one of the reasons some people didn't like the film, possibly at the time, is they don't see Lawrence Fishburne in a role like that. They see Lawrence Fishburne as a dramatic actor, someone who's going to be in a, a role like his Ike Turner role, something like that. They expect some wrenching, dramatic, emotional film when they see Lawrence Fishburne's name. So I think there was this immediate disconnect with the film. And they just thought, Lawrence Fishburne, sci-fi, captain of a spaceship, what in the world? So I think that was probably one of the things. Sam Neill has really sort of cemented himself as a great horror actor. I don't know if we're to this point of the story of the podcast yet, but for whatever reason, he seems to get these roles where the makeup has him with a carved up face.
Yeah.
I don't know why they like to destroy this poor man's face in these films that he's in. In The Mouth of Madness, I think Possession, he also had some issues with facial scarring and scratching and things of that nature. But I just thought the makeup in The Mouth of Madness and Event Horizon is strangely similar for poor Sam Neill.
There are definitely resonances there, and one reason why I like Event Horizon is like, oh, it's another Sam Neill movie where he winds up going into a very bad situation. He starts off as a protagonist, but winds up getting dropped into the deep end of eldritch horror. So I always kind of put those two movies together in my mind with him.
You know, acting wise, like it is kind of weird to think about because, you know, I make all these jokes about like, oh, like, you know, New Zealand's treasured actor and all of these kinds of things, but like,
well, he is a treasured actor.
He is a treasured actor, and like Sam Neill, even in genre spaces, is really well regarded by this point because he's done like Jurassic Park and Omen, one of the Omens, and he's done a bunch of stuff that was some of which you had mentioned, Eden, in terms of the horror side, right? And like Lawrence Fishburne, like I was just thinking about that, like in 2 years he does The Matrix, which is possibly his most iconic role in his career, because everybody and their mother is like, even when they remade The Matrix and they made that sequel nobody really wanted, even the Wachowskis, they hired an actor who is supposed to be like young Lawrence Fishburne. Like, so the acting is really effective, but I also love how there are such distinct characters in this. You've got the kind of hotshot, suave, like rescue guy. You've got they make a joke about this with just the doctor placing, is it Jason Isaacs, I believe, who's like, I'm the doctor, trauma, and they just all laugh at him because he's so serious. You've got like the British guy, Pertwee, who is equally serious, but in a sort of pragmatic way, in a very different way, not philosophical, almost like because he's the mechanic. Lawrence Fishburne is like the stern, you know, leader of the troop, and Sam Neill, who's like, he looks like he's 5 seconds away from being the kid that got his first chemistry set. You know, he's just so excited, like, about the prospect of like this big, amazing piece of technology I built is it might be
It's
around,
back.
and I might, we might look at this great thing. And so I think that's part of what makes the acting so interesting is there's such distinct characters who work together.
We see that in the scene. Like you didn't mention, like, for example, Jolie Richardson, who's Lawrence Fishburne's second in command. The scene where Sam Neill's trying to explain the gravity drive, and just about everybody's kind of either bored, tuned out, or not understanding what they're doing. She's fascinated. Watch her face. She's like, oh my God. She's like so into this. Everybody else is like dismissing it and not understanding, but she's like rapt with attention. So there's like these little hidden depths of every character gets something. It's got better characterization than a poor butchered movie should have any right to expect.
I think you're right. And, you've even got, the ingenue baby bear, the fact that he has a little nickname. You can tell that this crew, they've been together, they know each other, they trust each other, and this is honestly the last place they want to be and the last thing that they want to do, and get it over with for the most part, except for a few instances. But yeah, you can tell they know each other, they trust each other, and they think this is just going to be one more time out and have no idea what they're in for.
Yeah. Lawrence,
archetypes, but not trite.
Yes. Yeah, I love the bit with at the very beginning when Sam Neill's like, well, I appreciate you all being here. And like Lawrence Fishburne's character cuts him off and is like, I'm sure you do, but like, please know we were about to have shore leave. Like, none of us want to be here. So could we just get rid of all this nonsense and just get to the point so that we can do this mission and we can all go home to the bar and like have a good time in Cabo or whatever.
Why can't we go to Mars, Captain? Mars has got women.
Mars has got women. Then I think of some of these other roles that these characters have been in. You were mentioning The Matrix.
Yeah.
Shaun. But we were talking about John Wick earlier as well, which Lawrence Fishburne is also in that. And then I don't know if you're aware, because I don't know if any of you are into cooking shows, but Sean Pertwee is also the voice of British MasterChef. Is
he? I had no idea. I mean, when I think Sean Pertwee, I think Dog Soldiers, and of course being the son of John Pertwee, Doctor Who.
Exactly, but here he is very well known for being that voice that goes, Cynthia has made eau de boeuf with granulated crystals of. He's that voice.
I had no idea. Well. Wow.
And he's been doing it for years. So I kind of associate that as well. And him in Dog Soldiers, him in Event Horizon, that sort of one persona that he does really well. But then also I'm going to use this posh tone and describe all of this glorious, beautifully plated food that takes 15 processes to make.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
No, I know. I've learned a fact.
And I think the actor who plays Baby Bear was in U571.
Oh, was he?
I could have swore he's the one that where he in U571 they have the young submariner who turns out to come from a German family, and they find out that he can speak German, and he's like, please don't tell anybody else because I don't want the rest of my crewmates to know that I come from a German immigrant family because it's World War II and we're at war. So it's I think that's him, if I'm correct. But anyway, sorry. So we've been talking the acting. The other thing I think is really worth pointing out is the set design. Just the sheer volume of practical, literal, physical set. The actual machine itself that like allows them to travel, great distances, right? The gravity drive is literally a physical thing that is bigger than the people with 3 rings that rotate around it with lighting effects and everything. And I just, every time I see it and I see how much time they spent building these massive sets, that's part of, I think, what keeps me kind of coming back to it, right? Is I love that detail. And there's a lot of detail. And there are close-up shots where they hang on details. So you can see, like, this was not a cheap set, right? They really spent time and energy and effort and materials making this look good. You know, it's not plastic. I mean, it might literally be plastic, but it doesn't look like, you know, cheap plastic or cardboard. It looks like, you know, those set designers spent so much time making this feel real. And I love that about this film.
Absolutely. And some of the miniature work
Yeah.
is really, really gorgeous and detailed. So that even when you have those shots of the Lewis and Clark coming in, it doesn't, you know, look like a toy on a string, you know, that's sort of dangling in midair. You feel like they took time. They cared about the way this film would look in its final form.
Yeah.
And that ship, you know what, although it's a very different style, you know what the Event Horizon as a ship reminds me of?
Black Hole.
A Klingon bird of prey.
Yeah. No, the Cygnus from the Black Hole. It's a different kind of aesthetic style, but again, it's a very stylized, very strange, not what you would expect out of a spaceship.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going for high Renaissance glass art, whereas this is going for brutal Gothic, but it's the same sort of, like, we're going to take an aesthetic you wouldn't expect of a spaceship and just push it.
Yeah.
And make it work with practical effects and close-ups and miniature that it looks real, looks like something that somebody mad would build.
It does. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean,
I also think it looks a bit like a Klingon bird of prey in some of those long shots.
Yeah, because you do have the front thing, you have the boom, and then you have the back thing. So yeah, I do see it's the classic D7 Klingon cruiser sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's going on with that.
I will just note, while we're talking ships, Tiffany Matz in chat said a sort of a precursor to Warhammer 40k ships, and I will just note that in the production notes for this film, some of the people behind this said that they were actually inspired by some Warhammer 40k stuff. Both in the plot and my guess is also in some of the visual design. Because I guess in Warhammer 40k, when they travel through like its version of hyperspace, that you can like be possessed in their spirits. And like this film was imagined as like a spaceship that's haunted in space, basically.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of that here. And I think visually the ships have elements that kind of feel Warhammer 40k, which makes sense because Warhammer 40k has that sort of like Roman Gothic kind of feel to it, which is a little bit in this film too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this film also reminds me of another movie that didn't do well that came out about 5 years later. Have either of you ever seen Ghost Ship?
Yes.
Yes.
So again, we have a ship, we have a salvage crew instead of a rescue crew. They go on board, the ship starts killing them one by one. And that one, it also has an quasi-ambiguously bad ending. It was like the ship's possessing, trying to get a new crew, luring people in, killing people in horrible ways. I mean, when I think it's Shirley Richardson falls to her death in this movie, and then that happens to another character in Ghost Ship. It's like almost like an homage to this film, falling down the tomb to her death. It's like so that's another movie I pair with this one. It's like terrible ship that people go on and bad things happen.
And you're thinking Peters, played by Kathleen Quinlan, who is lured into the inner workings of the gravity drive by images of her child, and then she falls to her death.
Yeah, thank you.
In a twist of really terrible irony, unfortunately.
I mean, this ship plays on not everybody's fears. I think things
Almost,
got kind of.
yeah,
I mean, we don't,
almost.
but because almost everybody's fears get played on one another by the ship, and Lawrence Fishburne and Jason Isaacs have a conversation. It's like, I didn't tell anybody about the guy I left behind burning it. This ship knows it. It's a terrifying concept.
Yeah, and the characters that we don't see their fears manifest, it's because they're sort of secondary characters. We just have to assume that they have seen something. So like Baby Bear, right? He obviously sees something. He tells us he saw something inside himself. We just don't ever really witness it.
Well, but he gets thrown into the black hole and pulled out again, so he doesn't need the external visions that all the other characters seem to get. Many of the other characters seem to get.
Unfortunately, Baby Bear did the thing that you're never supposed to do, but he's the one that went, "Oh, what is this?" And he stuck his finger. Don't touch the thing. Don't stick your finger in the gravity drive. Don't lean close to the alien egg. None of that. But he was just let his curiosity get the better of him, and all of a sudden he was up to his wrist and just pulled him in the rest of the way.
Yeah.
I think that with Cooper and Stark are the two that we don't see their fears. I think we can assume that they've seen something, but you don't get into it. And I did wonder why that was, whether there was something left on the cutting room floor.
Yep, because there's a lot of footage that never got to screen. Yeah,
their experiences. Maybe they thought, look, their experiences weren't as gut wrenching as the others, so that maybe they left them off. Did Jason Isaacs character see?
Yeah, no, he that's DJ. So no, he didn't. Smitty, Soren Partly's character doesn't, but he barely is on the ship. He stays off the ship because he's smart and doesn't want anything to do with this. So he's mostly just fixing the Lewis and Clark after it gets ripped open. So that's a reason why he didn't have a vision, because he was just smart enough not to be on the ship as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, and definitely there's stuff that was left on the cutting room floor, because there is a 2-hour and 10-minute cut of this film that is unavailable. It is supposedly on a VHS somewhere that Paul Anderson may or may not have, ? And so there is a version of it that floats somewhere. And I guess that version was, the rumor is that when they screened it, did screen tests, some of the audience fainted. And because, as we noted at the very beginning, right, they were a little bit focused on other films like Titanic, I guess the executives stopped paying attention to the dailies, and so they weren't getting the R-rated, possibly NC-17 film that Paul W.S. Anderson was making. They didn't see those dailies, and so when they saw it, they were like, "Oh no, you gotta cut that down, and it can't be," because I guess there's we only see a glimpse of it in the theatrical cut, which is what you mostly have available. But there is a really horrifying, macabre orgy scene that exists in this, and we just get these little glimpses. They hired actual amputees and porn actors in this scene to act out the really horrific violence of this scene. And we get just the little blips, these little blips of really horrible images.
We get blipverts of stuff. Yeah.
Here and there. Well, imagine that was much longer and much more gory and much more effed up. And so, there must be stuff from the other characters we probably never will have at this point, which is sad.
Which makes me think of the Steven Soderbergh Solaris, which was cut down ruthlessly, and there's probably an hour of that movie that we'll never get to see either. It's the studio axe is sharp, and sometimes you cannot ever get it back.
Yeah, I mean it's unfortunate, and one would hope that if there's lots of talk about this possibly being, there was talk about a sequel, and then there's talk as late as last year of a possible television show that question mark is either a remake or a continue. It's unclear in the notes that I saw about this. But there was talk that they had ideas and scripts and so on for this. We just don't know where it is in the production cycle. And given the state of streaming, there are some legacy stream platforms that probably would take the risk of a fairly brutal exploration of the Event Horizon story, and we might get another director's version, not Paul W.S. Anderson's, which in fairness, Paul W.S. Anderson hasn't done a lot of great stuff since this movie. He did one good one, and then he did 9 others with his wife that were of increasingly questionable quality. Sorry to say, my friend, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I don't know. Well, it's really sad to me because like I really love film and I love seeing like old film, but like the further back you go, that there's just stuff that's gone forever because they didn't see a need to preserve those old films and they're just gone. And this is kind of a more modern version of that problem, which is they should have kept it somewhere, because you never know. And like 1997, well, what if there was another way we could make more money on this by releasing a longer cut or whatever? And there are people who would absolutely buy a boutique edition of this from one of those publishers that's like the theatrical and the 2-hour 10-minute version. Absolutely.
Yeah, like Shout Factory.
Yeah,
Shout Factory does a lot of good stuff with bringing these old movies back to life. I mean, they would make pretty good back on it.
Severin.
Yeah, Severin does it as well with lots of old film collections. And I don't know. I feel like sometimes with older movies, when it goes through the editing process, there is this this disregard for what was cut. It's not cut in a way to say we need to make a certain length, but let's set this aside for posterity's sake because this movie might be of some importance. The movie is given to, a lot of times, some outside company, and they just go, well, it's gory, or it's too much. Make it shorter and keep it this rating. And they're not given the instruction to say, whatever's cut out, we make sure to package that up, give it all back to us, preserve it, because we're just trying to make a certain parameter, and maybe later we'll do something else with it. It's a bit more conscious now that people do that, and obviously we've reached more digital filming. But a lot of times I just think there's just a disregard.
Yeah.
What they go, this is clearly rubbish, so we're just going to cut it and toss it out.
Yeah. And to some degree, and I don't know if you think this, Eden, but this is probably the film's biggest flaw, is I think at the roughly hour, 30-something minute version of this film, there's a little bit of connective tissue that's missing in the story. And that's stuff that, while I don't know that we necessarily need more of the like gory, scary stuff per se, more of those connective bits for the characters and their eventual descent, in my opinion, I feel like is part of what's missing here. And I don't know that we need a 2-hour, 10-minute version per se, but another 10 minutes of some of that connective tissue would probably help build out this story while keeping the mystery, because I don't want them to like reveal everything, because that's, I think, a mistake too. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Eden.
I'm of two minds about it, because I think that having a little bit of connective tissue, because that's a lot of times when when you read craft books for writing, for screenplays, for all that, they want to make sure that there are all these connections. Make sure that this scene connects to this scene later. Make sure that you draw all these parallels. And obviously there are people that write films that don't do those connections quite as tightly. but that's what the books tell you to do. This scene has to make sense from a narrative story arc point of view. And it makes it a much more satisfying watch for the viewer because they go, oh, I can see how everything connects and I can see why this was important and this makes sense to me. And from that point of view, I do understand. But there's also a part of me that, I don't know, maybe it's my, Lynchian philosophies. I just like obscure things sometimes. I sometimes go, do I understand exactly why this happened? No. Would I like to know? Yes, but it makes it, I don't know, it makes it more intriguing for me sometimes than when things aren't completely explained or all the dots aren't connected for me.
That's true. It's like, why does Kathleen Quinlan see her child? I mean, her child is alive. It's not like her child is dead. It's just like her ex has a child. So why does she see her child? I mean, we can understand Lawrence Fishburne seeing the flaming guy. It makes sense. He left him behind. He dies. That makes perfect sense. But why does she see her child? Is it the little connectivity or mystery or mystery to why she go chasing after her child, which she should actually know her child is 3 billion clicks away.
And yes, you're watching the movie going, clearly this is not your child. You know that your child is not on this ship. And that's one of the things that I don't like is this, for her character, it's playing on this maternal instinct of she can't help herself. She can't help but pursue this thing that she perceives as her child. But earlier, when she sees her child in the medical bay, in the tent-like structure, and he's injured, his legs are gangrenous almost, I think. And they don't say this, but I do wonder sometimes if it's a situation where she goes, I don't really trust my husband to take care of my kid.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of those sort of undertones of, oh yeah, he's with the father or he's with whatever. But there's sometimes some mothers that feel like, well, he's not going to get the kind of care that I'm going to give him because his father is not as on top of things. And again, that's drawing a huge conclusion that's not given. Right. It's not stated in the film.
I mean, we have the conversation between her and Lawrence Fishburne about like switching, like he'll have him for Christmas and I'll have him for summer, and I'll get him for the summer. But the way she says it's like you're not happy about this, and more than we're actually being given here, more than just not seeing. You're not telling us everything, and we don't get that connective tissue that Shaun says. Or like, for example, the first time I saw this movie in the movie theater, I had the misimpression that Sam Neill's wife was on the ship and he lost her. It took me like a second or third time to realize, oh no, the real story is Sam Neill's wife killed herself, and that's why he's been alone for these 7 years. And so we get that scene with her in the bathtub. It's like, oh, that's what this is going for.
Yeah. I think Lawrence Fishburne is actually the thing that helps explain Peter's decisions. Because Miller, because they start having some of these things, right? So like Peters has her kid in the little med bay, and there's others that are seeing strange things and having weird experiences, and they're talking about it. And Lawrence Fishburne's Miller comes in, and like the doctor keeps trying to find like logical reasons for why everything would be happening because he doesn't believe anything. And Miller says that it was real. It felt real. He could feel the heat on his body. And I think that gives us the clue why everyone's reacting the way they are. It is, to some degree, everybody, it isn't something that feels like just a hallucination, right? It feels purely real. And, while Miller's character acknowledges that it's not literally real and that like he recognizes that he's not really there. That's a unique thing for Miller's character that is not the case for other characters, right? So Weir, for example, Dr. Weir, played by Sam Neill, he has these images of his deceased wife, and then towards the end he basically has like a full-on like in the bathroom experience with her, almost like he's been transported off, and then he loses his eyes, and that's whole thing. Peter's character sees her kid, and you could understand like she misses her family. She's away from them. She's on these missions. She doesn't get to see her kid, right? And she loves her child. And if she felt that's my kid, it felt like my kid. It feels real, real, real. And she can't disentangle it from it in the way Miller can. You could understand why she would follow, right? I mean, that's exactly what you would do if your kid's running around in a demonic spaceship from the other realm. Like, you would go chase after your kid to like help them. It's like a break in reality.
It's a guilt thing for all of them, though, isn't it? She feels guilty that she's not there for her kid, that she's away X amount of time when she should be there with him. Obviously, Dr. Weird, feels guilty that he was so focused on his job to the extent that his wife felt so neglected that she wanted to end things in her life. And then, obviously, Captain Miller went, I left a man behind. And it was this extreme guilt that makes them go, I'm reliving these images, these hallucinations. But you're right, Miller's is the one where it's so visceral for him, that fire and that heat. But the experience that Dr. Weir has when he's in stasis, he's already dreaming about about his wife. And you get the sense that this is something that's been ongoing these past 7 years since his wife's been gone.
Yeah.
He still has these dreams. He's still reliving it, so that when he gets back on the ship, that
ship uses it. Yeah.
Yes, and it's that moment that I think someone posted the picture of the close-up of his eye with the machine reflected in his eye. It's like that moment for me is the moment where it's started to embed itself in his psyche and pulling strings.
And Weir's great because when talking about his guilt, because I agree, and I agree in chat, Configuration Queen is saying that guilt predominates this movie, and I would agree with you both. With Weir, I think because he has those dreams early on, those moments, those strange things when he's in this like weird back to tank thing that he's in, it sort of it helps you understand why he's the one that becomes uniquely susceptible to whatever power or force is there, because other characters, it seems to want to kill them. And we don't know exactly why. I think to me, it's because only some of these characters have the power that it's looking for. Some of them maybe lack that. And with Sam Neill's character, he sort of gives himself over to it so completely. And he doesn't have to be totally and entirely possessed in the same way as like Baby Bear is, who sort of gets possessed into, unfortunately, effectively ending his own life, right? Although he doesn't technically. He does survive. He just ends up not being in the rest of the movie. He's in a tank for the rest of it. And so I think those little flashbacks for his character really give us a sense of why he's so... It's not just that he's the one that made this thing. It's because there's something deep in him that is manipulable, and it can get into him in a way that it can't with the other characters, because the other characters just don't react the way it wants. Miller, as we pointed out, right? His reaction is, I know that it was real, but I also know that it's not real. And so he can rationalize it, weirdly enough, in a way Weir can't, who is supposed to be our hyper-rational character. And I think it's because their guilt is different. And I think because, like, with Miller's guilt, yes, he feels guilty about this soldier that is left behind, but his guilt is also a recognition of there was no choice there. Like, he had to leave him behind, and it is a thing he has to live with. Whereas with Weir's, that was a deliberate choice on his part to neglect his wife in the service of building this machine. And so whatever contribution he made there, he didn't have to make those choices. He didn't have to do it to save anybody else's life. Weirdly enough, he could have just not made the machine, and this whole story wouldn't have happened, right? And then theoretically, he and his wife would be like, off having dinner somewhere. And I think that's a good comparison between the two of them that I think to make.
And also with Weir, with Miller, that was a one moment in time choice that he made to leave that soldier behind. And he said, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to let that happen. This project for Weir obviously took an extraordinary amount of time. So he made that choice each and every day to not spend time with his wife, to not notice what was happening with her. So those were consistent choices that he kept making over time, as opposed to once it happened, I'm promising that's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
Right, he's going to do better going forward. I mean, that's why he goes to such great lengths to save baby bears. Like, he's like, I'm not going to let this happen again.
Yeah. Well, also,
whereas
worth pointing out
Weir's
too
choices.
That Weir's character is implied, right, because of the situation with his wife, that he prioritizes his work over the feelings of others. He does the same thing when they get to the event horizon, because he's being told by other people, we need to get off this ship, we need to get out of here, we need to do all of this stuff, and like, this ship is like, there's something horrible has happened here, we need to leave. And he refuses at every step of the way, despite the fact you've got people dying, a guy threw himself out an airlock, you've got crazy hallucinations that are happening. He's seeing the hallucinations and just not acknowledging it to other people. He's so dedicated to this thing that he can't seem to just prioritize other people, or even, frankly, the safety of the other people in the group. Once they realize something horrible has happened here, there are bizarre dead bodies floating in the air with like crazy flesh torn off and all kinds of things. And it's his priorities are never about people.
Yeah, no, it's his ship, and we're in getting back to maybe that's part of his like working out. Like, I lost Claire, but I have the ship. I lost the ship, but the ship is back, so I'm going to cling onto that ship with everything I've got.
Yeah, no wonder the ship loves him.
Well, and why the ship creates a version of Claire for him. Yeah, the ship knows what it's doing. It's like, this is how I keep Weir on side. Yeah. I have a version. I mean, going back to Solaris, it's kind of like Solaris. Like, I make a version of Claire for you, and you'll do anything I want. And does. It's like, what makes you think I'll miss? I mean, he's willing to like destroy parts of the ship to try to get rid of everybody else, just to have his, return to be reunited with his wife in a very weird sort of way. And again, Solaris lost a wife because of neglect, and goes to a very strange place where visions. I love the interconnections between all these movies and cinematic pieces.
It's also fascinating to me when he is shown the actual scene of his wife ending her life. He turns away. Even though he knows it's not real, he doesn't even attempt to sort of intervene or stop it or say anything. He just turns away and says, I can't go through this again. And when the ship brings him back, it makes me wonder with it's been so willing to kill other people. Is it because at some point it knows that it can just, as long as they're still tied to the ship in some way, can it still bring them back if it wants to? And it's just this cycle that it keeps sort of playing out over and over again.
Yeah, again, like Ghost Ship, yes, I think it can bring bring these people back if it wants to. Now, like, well, it killed its crew. Like, well, it has a new crew. It's like, ugh. So yeah, that's like a crew of the damned and a ship that's been to hell and back and is going back.
And I love that pause that Sam Neill does. You know, Miller says, the ship killed its crew. He pauses like, he's right. It did kill his crew. And he's like, yes, well, now it's got a new crew. He doesn't have a response for that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where this is where maybe, I can understand why Sam Neill's Weir can, mentally is easily manipulated by whatever this power is that's in the ship now. But it is also something where I kind of want a little more, because I want to see his descent. So in a way, like, this film has a plot that's very similar to The Shining, right? There is a man who, for all intents and purposes, seems like a perfectly sane, hardworking dude who privileges work over everything else, but he has a darkness in him. In this case, a darkness because of his wife. And this malevolent entity, whatever it is that is in the ship, slowly works its way into him until it twists him into the person that he doesn't want to be, but fundamentally is. And I kind of would love to see that descent happen a little slower, because I'd love to see how much manipulation pulls him down. But that's just my feeling.
Well, it's also got that other sort of homage to The Shining scene, where the blood comes sort of through the pipes and fills the chamber of liquid and ends up breaking and sort of washing over, what's her name?
Stark.
So it's got that sort of scene in there. And I know what you mean, Shaun. I would love to know sort of what else does it do? What else does it show? I wonder if that's just sort of I enjoy this movie and I just, want more of it. Seeing how it plays with them over this short period of time, because it's a very abbreviated period of time.
Yeah.
That this is happening within. I mean, talk about a really short ticking clock.
Yeah. Yeah. The CO2 scrubbers and the oxygen are their ticking clock. So they've got to get things fixed and get out of there, or they will suffocate.
Well, I think part of why I'm so interested in that is there's a moment where, we get the impression that Weir is slowly being manipulated, but the moment at which it finally flips over, to me, happens a little quickly, because everything up to the moment where he basically, like, has his eyes gouged out, right, and he's like full on on board, there's this like a little implied very slow build, right? He's super hyper rational at the beginning. He's seen some things that his rational brain can't handle, but I'm going to stick to the rational. And then it slowly gets a little bit less so as he's sticking his guns. And there's a moment where it just like flips over. And now he's like, I'm going to cut up my eyeballs and like, cut my face up and all of these kinds of things. And I would love to see, like, is part of what's happening here by relinquishing himself to this entity, whatever it is, this thing that we know to be hyper violent to astonishingly grotesque degrees. Is it that by relinquishing himself, he finds pleasure in it, or he gets release, or something? There's something there that makes him willing to put up with the gouging of the eyeballs and all of these kinds of really grotesque things that make those not seem important. Distinctly from Baby Bear, who is terrified of what it showed him. Whatever he saw when he was on the other side, whatever darkness is in him, it terrifies the hell out of him in a way that Weir, by the end, seems like pleased. He embraces it. He loves it. And there's just something missing that just like, what is it that finally flips him?
For me, it's there's this scene where, like, right before his eyes are gouged out, it's It's Claire, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, she's in, I guess, their home or a version of their home or bathroom or wherever they are. And she's standing there and he's either sitting or kneeling at her feet. And she's talking to him and saying, don't you want to be with me forever? And he says, yes, that he does. And that's when she reaches for his face. And she's the first one to actually gouge his eyes out. And then the camera pulls back, and then you see him alone next to the gravity drive doing it himself. And I do wonder if that's the reason. It's, don't you want to be with me? Don't you want to be with me now, finally? And this is the price that you're going to have to pay in order to do that. It's very, in a way, for me, sort of Hellraiser-y.
Oh, yeah, there's another good comp, too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird.
You know, it's got that scene and also what happens to Jason Isaacs' character. You know, with the hooks and the vivisection, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that was. It's got those Hellraiser-y elements also. Yeah,
there's something about the darkness that's there that delights in the grotesque. And it's weird because when you think about the images were shown from the other side, it's people screaming but seemingly unable to stop themselves from what they're doing. They're like driven to madness. We're not sure what it is. This is one of the things I like the most, is like they just don't tell us exactly what's going on. We have to kind of interpret. And so there's whatever this entity or force or power or whatever it is loves to watch people do horrific. It's almost like I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, from that story, which delights in torturing the last remaining humans, in making them do horrific things and doing horrible things to their bodies. This thing seems to find some sort of, whatever you would call it, I'm going to call it pleasure because I don't know what else you call it, by watching them do horrific stuff to each other, which makes it a purely malignant force because it is effectively sadomasochist to the extreme. And Sam Neill joining that, we're joining this, right? Trying to say, like, you can't leave where we're going. You won't need it. They're all going to die if they go to the other side. They're going to be driven to this extreme madness and do horrific stuff to each other. And then the ship's going to come back for more and more.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get. The ship's going to just come back for more and more. It's just like more spoonfuls of unwitting humans.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
And I feel like one of the things too, with it bonding so closely to Weir's character, when you look at the credits, Sam Neill is credited as Weir/the Beast.
Beast?
Yes.
Oh, I never caught that.
Yeah, he's credited that way. So to me, it means, you know, because he's got these symbols and all of this stuff sort of scratched and etched into his skin, you know, sort of mark of the beast type of thing. And I wonder if that's sort of where those connections are drawn, because he's now sort of playing this role where he's now the antagonist, the villain, if you will, because he's been so thoroughly taken over. That it is a demonic possession. So is this demonic possession, you know, actually, you know, Antichrist, the Beast, you know, which parallels again his role in Omen 3.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a little thing that happens to him in his supposed death, he comes back from it, right? So if we remember Baby Bear, he's clearly possessed. He's behaving super weird, right? And he opens it, basically starts the airlock, and then the alarm sound, and he seems to wake up from his possession, and then he pleads and all of those kinds of things. But it's a pretty prolonged pleading, right? It happens for a while. that scene, there is a moment when Weir's character is flung out the window where he says Miller, but we don't see pleading, we don't see anything. And so I saw that and thought, is he at this moment possessed and being forced to do something he doesn't want to do, or not? And it's manipulation, but it's just too late because he's being thrown out. And I don't know that I have an answer to that, because I think the easy choice would be, it's just a possession, the same way as Baby Bear's. I don't know what we could call it, a Baby Bear. He has a name, but that was his nickname. And
Justin, yeah.
It's Baby Bear, it's fine. I think the easy answer is just say, he's possessed, just like anybody else, right? But because I think that he relinquishes himself to this, I don't know that a possession means the same thing in this moment. And I don't know that he can wake up from it at that moment. So I don't know that that's what that means.
I don't know, because, again, this movie it's created its own sort of lore for itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, let's call it a film that has a Catholic exorcism, where there are those rules of there's two personas sort of fighting for one physical form, and one stronger than the other, and eventually, one takes charge, but the other one is, for the most part, still there, just very suppressed. So I don't know if we want to sort of go with that established lore, or just go Event Horizon is a different sort of entity altogether. This, it's gone past the boundaries of knowable space, time, universes, whatever, and it's come back possessed, sentient, evil. Does that mean that there is a lore unto itself that isn't something that we can necessarily grasp?
Maybe, and the only way we'll know. Yeah, the only way we'll know how sadistic the ship is and what is the truth is if they make that TV show. The problem I hope they don't commit is where they give us every answer in very clear, objective ways, because I feel like that's a mistake. It is more interesting when there's a little bit of the unknown here.
The dark unknown horror. I mean, I see in chat, but there's been a couple points that it's not sadomasochistic because the ship itself doesn't. Yeah, it's sadistic and evil.
Yeah.
Not sadomasochistic.
Because it's not deriving pleasure from its own pain. And I don't even know that we can even say sadist, because it's not. I don't know that it is deriving pleasure from other people's pain.
It's just doing it. Yeah, evil is as evil does.
I want to be clear. That is humanizing a potentially sentient, questionable spaceship.
Non-human alien.
I don't know what pleasure is to whatever entity is involved here. And I don't know that we can apply our this is so silly. What am I doing right now?
But here's a thing. Okay.
The Hellraiser thing.
Yeah.
Those demons where they just say, we have delights to show you. Do you really find them delights? Do they think that they're delights? I don't know. We see it as a spaceship. Maybe it is something else. It makes a point to destroy the Lewis and Clark, so it is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
It is doing these things on purpose. Is it just this is the thing that it is now? It's instinctual, so it's doing it without enjoying it or without having any pleasure or anything like that, or has it been instructed in some way? Created, crafted to do these things.
Yeah. We'll never know, Eden.
We'll never know. Here's a positive thing I noticed, because I read about it on the internet and I had to look and see it. Did you either you notice Dr. Weir's patch?
No.
On his uniform.
Yes. I did see that instead of the British flag in the upper corner of his patch, he specifically requested to have the Maori flag placed there on his patch. And the patch that Pertwee and, I think Stark have, looks like a blown up flag of the European Union.
Oh.
So there's a slightly positive future of, our friends down under get their crap together, and we have a positive multicultural presence in space.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, we get this fun stuff before all the horror and death. But yes.
Well, the bad
I think
news
that's great
is
that you specifically requested that.
that's a very cool request. Yeah. National treasure, New Zealand's national treasure, Sam Neill.
International treasure.
Well, he is also an international. That is true. Does anybody dislike Sam Neill? I don't think there is anybody who dislikes Sam Neill. So, there you go.
I don't know anyone.
He should be our representative when the aliens visit. Maybe not alone. Like, send him with some other people.
No, not alone, because they'll come back possessed. We don't want that.
Well, only if they're evil aliens. Like, stop assuming evil.
I am assuming evil. That was bad of me.
All right. Well, we gotta wrap up, guys. So with that in mind, we do have a lovely script we get to follow for ending this. So, this was interesting. I'm sure we could say more things about it. Let's just hope that maybe they do make more stuff in this universe and we get some more cool things and nuggets to see. If, however, you have thoughts about this movie and you'd like to let us know about it, there's a lovely and beautiful way that you can do so. One way is skiffingfanty@gmail.com, or you can join our Discord via our Patreon page, and then you could tell us that we're wrong or right. Whatever makes you happy. We are on many of the places where you can find podcasts and other things. Blue Sky, Threads, Mastodon, YouTube, all that stuff. You can find that actually at skiffyandfanty.com/skiffythings, which is all of those cool things. And if you'd like to support the show or find us on the find all of the above. I don't even know what's happening, guys. I am just like my wheels just spun off. I don't know what happened. Let me redo that. Let's see. Oh, don't miss us every Friday, 7 p.m. Central. That's one of the things. And if you'd like to find us, we're on twitch.tv/alphabetstreams for the show. And then you can join our Patreon page, leave reviews and all of that good stuff, because that would be really nice of you to do. And then that's all the things I'm going to say. So I'm at Alphabet Streams as well. I stream Wednesdays, Sundays at 6 p.m. Central. My social stuff is SeanDuke.net/DukeThings.
You can find me, Paul Weimer, Prince Justin, all across the internet except for the fascism hellholes, as Prince Justin with a V. Book reviews, podcasting, sharing photography, streaming, and more. I am ubiquitous on the internet. Throw a rock and you'll find my stuff.
I guess that leaves me. I am Eden Royce, or at Eden Royce on most social network sites except for Instagram, where I am at Eden Royce Books. So for anything horror, gothic, Southern Gothic horror for middle grade, young adult, and adults. And I think that's probably it. Oh, and my website is EdenRoyce.com. And I promise to do a little bit of a better job about keeping that updated.
And do you have something coming out this year? Like a story or a random shoe?
I possibly have something coming out this year. I have yet to get a definitive date, but I have a novella coming out with Tor called Psychopomp and Circumstance. And it is a historical fantasy / folkloric it. And it may be out in October of this year, but I haven't quite gotten a final yes on that. They're still at we're shooting for October of this year, but the cover reveal should be soon, so maybe with that, I'll get some definitive dates.
Excellent. Well, that's okay. So do check out, obviously, EdenRoyce.com, and please check out Eden's books. Eden writes lots of really cool books, which you should, I mean, you all know this because we've interviewed Eden about like every book, almost.
Yeah, I think we have a near perfect record.
Nearly. I don't think we've got you on for literally everything, but all the novels, I think we got you for.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's great. Well, thank you, Eden, for making us do this against our will.
It is my pleasure to make you do these things against your will. Just don't start calling me Event Horizon.
I will not call you Event Horizon. You're too nice. That ship's mean.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is. It's just mean and evil. Yeah. And, probably it's just not a good host.
No. It's not the kind of ship you bring home to mom.
Definitely not.
No.
Definitely not.
Well, anyway,
Get out while you still can.
Yeah. As is required by the updated Skiffy Fanny bylaws, I must make it happy instead of awkward now. And so in order to keep things happy and joyful and wonderful, I will just let everybody know that I am building my own Event Horizon right now. But this version takes you to an alternate dimension, which is full of lollipops and dancing animals and beautiful and lovely castles and adventure and absolutely no suffering of any kind because everybody there's just happy. And if you want to start a random musical in the middle of the day with a whole entourage, you can. So, fund the ship. It is, as Triffany Bat said, I'm going to take that from you. It is the good ship Lollipop.
Well played, Triffin.
Well played. And on that note, happy ending and scene.
Stay frosty.